So here I am, like, I figured out what I'm going to do now. I don't need to go back to work. I could build furniture. I invested everything into it, got the shop, all the money, everything that I had, bought all new tools, everything. And then he went and did that. And it was just like, that's when things started spiraling in my head. And I was like, fuck.
So part of your story, though, getting you to be a healer, was that you had had some addiction stuff back when,
Yep.
and you woke up with a new nightmare.
Yeah. So prior to my accident, let's see, I'm this New Year's I will be sober for 9 years. I've been without my leg for almost 6. So 3 years I was sober off of heroin. I had done heroin for 10 years straight. So basically from when I was 19 until 30, those 10, 11 years, there was just not a day without me partying like a rock star. I would do whatever, but it was mainly focused on opiates. Ever since I, did pills when I was like 19 years old, it was just one thing after another. And then the heroin addiction, started shooting it, shot it for 10 years or so, 8 years maybe. And then one day I was sitting on the toilet in the morning and I'm feeling like shit because I didn't have my drugs. And I'm just like, man, my brother and I are like the most talented people I know. We can do anything. And here I am spending every dollar that I earn to make myself sick. And I'm like, thinking to myself about terminally ill children and how their parents would pay every dollar they can ever come up with just to have one more second with their babies. And I was like, man, I have to stop doing this to my parents. Like, I need to make them proud before they die while I have a chance still. And that day forward, I never touched heroin again. I was on methadone. The high dose, back when I was using, because it's like, if you don't have drugs, then you need to have your methadone to make sure you're not puking and shitting your brains out. So I was on a high dose, and I stayed there for a little bit, and then I found out I was having a kid, and I was like, fuck, I'm not going to just stop because I know how bad it would be. I was working full time. I was a lead fabricator and installer for a high-end countertop business, like going 14-hour days lifting 400-pound stones. Like, I couldn't stop. My boss is a Navy SEAL. Like, I had to go. Like, that was it. So I wanted to taper properly. So I made a goal, and I said by my son's 3rd birthday, I will be off of this, because I didn't want him to see me taking a medicine and asking questions or being able to understand what I was doing. So I was like, by 3 years old, I want to be done, and I want to do it right. Never want to fuck up. So I set a goal, and I dropped 10 milligrams a month for the first however long to get from 140 milligrams down to, I think, 40. 10 milligrams a month till I got to 40. Then at 40, that's when you start feeling it more. So I went 5 milligrams a month down to, I got to 20. Then I went from 20, I went 2 milligrams a month down till I was on 2. And I stayed there for 2 months, and I got off of it, walked away, and I was done like 2 months ahead of schedule. So great. I'm finally off opiates for the first time in my adult life, right? Feeling great. The cloud's starting to lift off my brain. I'm starting to feel like a fucking human again. 4 months later, I crashed my bike. I wake up in the hospital on a fentanyl drip, which is,
Which just leads to being really addicted.
I was just like, fuck, man. 4 months, and here I am. So I lived in the hospital for 6 weeks on the started fentanyl. Then they put me to Dilaudid, kept me on a Dilaudid drip. Then once I got to my rehab, I was on Oxycontin and Dilaudid pills by the handful every fucking day. And then they released me and kept me on those drugs, and 9 other pharmaceuticals. They had me on things that they put me on SSRIs without even telling me, because they were using it for nerve pain.
How are SSRIs corresponding to, like,
I
nerves?
guess there's one that they use that helps with nerve pain. I'm not quite sure, but when I found out, it was in rehab. It was about 4 weeks after they had already given it to me without telling me. And some awesome Indian woman, for the first time, she's popping out my drugs, and she's like, this one is for stool softener, this one is for pain, this one is for mood stabilizer. And I was like, what? Mood stabilizer? Why am I on a mood stabilizer? Like, I had been positive throughout the whole process. I cut my leg off, yeah, but I wasn't depressed or sad about it. I was like, you know what? I'm fucking dealing with it. I'm moving on. So I kept that good attitude. So for them to put me on a mood stabilizer, I was like, why would I be? And she's like, oh, well, they might be using it for nerve pain. And I was like, well, so I asked her for all of the literature on the drug, and it was like page after page after page of consult your doctor. Basically, it's like,
right, but you can't consult your doctor. You're in a coma.
right. Well, I wasn't in a coma,
or
but, yeah, but they're supposed to go over these drugs and the reactions and ask questions before just putting you on them, and they did not do that. They just put me on it, and it was like, once I found out the literature, I told them, I said, I want off this immediately. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I was like, why? I'm in a hospital under 24-hour supervision. Like, check on me a little more if you think I'm going to be suicidal. Where am I going to go? I have a broken right ankle. I have no leg. Like, I'm not killing myself in this hospital bed.
Wait, so you had a broken ankle too on top of all
that?
that? So you go to stand up 3 times on a broken ankle? She's going to have to go up, honey. Yeah.
Up. I had a broken collarbone, a broken ankle, 10 stitches, and cut my leg off. So at rehab, it was like, they wouldn't let me use crutches because I was broken here.
Yep.
I couldn't use a wheelchair because I was broken, and I couldn't stand up. So they gave us this fucking wheelchair that has like a handle on it, and it pumps, and you crank it, and you can turn it. It was actually so much fun. I was sitting there zooming through rehab, like cranking, moving around. It was a good time, but
adding horsepower.
I was a fall risk at rehab, so like it was kind of pointless. I couldn't work out. It was weird, but. What was I saying?
So basically, for yourself, I'm basically looking to learn about your journey of how you became a healer, because you woke up re-addicted.
Yes.
And then I know there was a spiral afterwards.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, leading to you wanting to work with people in this, I'll call it the neurological department,
right,
of actually healing the physical constructs of the mind, of trauma.
Yeah.
But so you're in the hospital.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm in the hospital. And then I get out of the hospital on 11 pharmaceuticals. Didn't feel like myself at all. And my first goal was, I need to get off the opiates. That was, first things first. Pharmaceuticals, Oxycontin, Dilaudid by the handful. And, I still had a broken ankle. I had a somewhat bloody nub. They skin graft both my thighs. Had to wrap it. Takes a while to heal, get everything. So I couldn't even go get a prosthetic. I got out August 18th from the hospital. I didn't go in to measure for a prosthetic until like October or so. So in that time, I'm just basically a blob. I can't really go anywhere. My poor girlfriend did such a good job taking care of me and just making sure I was comfortable and was fed. And, I couldn't really move far. It was tough for me to hop. I had a cam boot on my right foot, which is like a weird rock. So like, I don't know, it was weird. So I had to wait until I got into a prosthetic to get off the drugs, because I knew that stepping on that after being atrophied and going through all that trauma, it's going to be painful. So I wanted to make sure that I, at least if I was already on the drugs, I'm like, let me get comfortable with the leg. And then as soon as I'm in that, I'll get off. And that's what I did. I took my first steps, walked on it for a minute. And I was like, yeah, we're good. This is nothing. The pain's not that bad. And I just stopped. Luckily, I had all the knowledge of beating it from the last time. So this time I had...
When you say beating it?
Beating the addiction with, the right tools. Like last time I used methadone and tapered properly. This time I knew my addiction was shorter. So I knew my body wasn't that... It wasn't 10 years of opiate use, right?
Is that how addiction is? I'm actually very ignorant when it comes to addiction in terms
The longer you're on it, the more you need, the more your body gets used to all the hormone levels and everything. Your body just adapts to basically blocking off all the receptors and just loads of, fake stuff in your body. So the longer you're on it, the more your body gets used to it. So it's easier to get off a short-term use than it is 10 years, not only habitually, you're so used to a routine after being on 10 years that like just stopping and not going to your dealer is fucking hard, because you've been doing it every day for 10 years. Like that's your best friend at that point. You burned every bridge. So I was just like, you know what? I used a Suboxone instead of methadone. I took one Suboxone, which is 8 milligrams, and I cut that into multiple little pieces. And I just tapered myself off of the Oxycontin and Dilaudid, and I did it like in a 2-week period. And after the 2-week period, just walked away. Then I just started slowly getting off of all of, I think I was on gabapentin, for nerves and stuff. So I had to get off that and all the other ones. And in a few months, I was completely off of all pharmaceuticals.
So a quick question, just because I want to find out, because you had mentioned in your story previous to coming on here, like your girl eventually walked away, sort of like you were in danger of losing your kid, I think.
Not
like,
losing my kid.
not
No,
losing your
I
kid?
wasn't in danger of losing my kid. I mean, things were...
Or it was that you wanted to be a better father or something.
Yeah, things were rocky with my son's mother at one point, and obviously it was all new to her too.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough, and we didn't know where we were going. I went from having money and everything I wanted in a career to not knowing what I was going to do. All my money was quickly dwindled.
And you do roofing.
Now I do, but at the time I did high-end countertops,
Yep.
like custom concrete, and so very physical all day long. I'm huffing around 500-pound slabs of stone, carrying them upstairs, doing, you know what I mean? Like, so now I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that ever again? I'm a skilled craftsman. It's what I've always been. I've always built. Didn't know what I was going to do for money, so things got rocky for a little bit. But as far as getting into the healing thing, I got off all those drugs, and what that does is it messes with your hormones and things. It was only a few months that I was on them, but still getting off of 11 pharmaceuticals at one point when you're trying to figure out life, it's not an easy thing. Your brain is all over the place. I was using cannabis for pain and trying to deal with it, like in higher doses, FICO and RSOs.
What's an RSO?
RSO is Rick Simpson's oil. It's just very concentrated form of cannabis. They use it for cancer patients and things. It's a very high dose. It's like a little tar, and you just eat it orally. And I was taking that to beat the sleep. When you were withdrawing off opiates, it's hard to sleep at night. So
Okay.
I would take that and just try to work it in and slowly adapt. And that's what I did. And then, I didn't work for obviously months. And then a friend of mine, well, not a friend anymore, but a friend of mine at the time when I was in the hospital, he was building beds and bed frames in his backyard, and people were buying them. And, I'm a craftsman, so I was like, bro, we can blow this up. Like, people are buying them. You want to build furniture? Like, let me help you, and let's do this together. So we started slow. We were building little things, and then with all of my connections, I got us a shop, fully furnished shop, all table saws, everything, and it blew up. We were building custom rustic furniture, bed frames, dressers from scratch. If somebody wanted something, a custom size, I would just take it and completely make it fully custom. And things were, money was coming in, things were picking up. I was like, holy shit, like, this is going to be a success. And we were both recovering addicts. He had a new daughter, and I thought he was doing great. And out of nowhere, his just self-sabotage need, he ended up stealing $40,000-ish from
I remember this.
my customers and myself, and shot it up his arm and just relapsed. And so here I am, I figured out what I'm going to do now. I don't need to go back to work. I could build furniture. I invested everything into it, got the shop, all the money, everything that I had, bought all new tools, everything. And then he went and did that. And it was just that's when things started spiraling in my head, and I was like, fuck,
I
was
had
like,
the timeline wrong. Okay,
yeah. So I had to start all over again, and, lost everything again. And I'm like, fuck, I just figured things out. I was, things were good in my head. I'm like, I have a shop, I have a place I could bring my kid, I'm gonna be all right. And then, he burned all my bridges. He ruined my reputation in that realm. So I was like, I just stopped. I didn't even want to try to do it on my own, because he had burned so many people that I just kept, every day I would get another message from people like, hey, have you heard from John? He took $1,000 and then blocked me. What's going on? And he just kept doing it even after I let the public know, do not give this kid any money. He's just stealing right now. Completely fucked me. People kept doing it. He kept taking it. And I was at that point I was just frustrated with life. I was like, what the fuck, man? All I'm doing is trying to do right every single step of the way, and I just keep getting a wrench thrown in my way. And I'm like, so I started getting really down on myself, and that's when it started spiraling negatively for probably 6 months. And it just kept getting worse and worse, and I was more and more dependent on people emotionally. My girlfriend especially, she and I were only together 2 months before the accident, so it was new. So she put her whole life on hold to stay in the hospital with me all the time, came, when I came back, she basically kept me in her house and just took care of me forever. And I became dependent on that mentally and physically, and it was very needy, and it became toxic within myself, and I was taking it out on her. And she basically was like, listen, I know you're better than this. Like, let's stop things and get your shit together. And that was all the fire I needed. And I just stopped all the fucking woe is me bullshit. I had a pot dealer at the time, and he gave me like an eighth of mushrooms ground up into capsules into like 0.8s, which is a little less than a gram. And I had bad experiences on psychedelics a decade prior because I was doing LSD while doing heroin, and had bad experiences. So I was really afraid of doing mushrooms. I'm like, how is this gonna fucking heal me? And at that point I was like, I have nothing else to lose.
Let me just ask a quick question before you continue. You said, I have nothing to lose. This is gonna heal me. How did you get led though to believing that microdosing was gonna heal you?
Okay, so obviously I had seen and read, you hear things, like it was just starting to trickle in about microdosing and the benefits of it. And my girlfriend Naja has 2 clients who are doctors. They're, I think, psychologists in New York. Trust them deeply. So I just reached out to them and I was like, listen, I don't want to go on pharmaceuticals. I'm losing my shit. Mm-hmm. Buddy of mine gave me mushrooms. Like, what is your opinion on this? Like, you're obviously around it. You're in New York, so I know you hear about it. And they gave me a bunch of literature, and they were like, listen, I think it's a great idea. We can't obviously like medically say that you should do it, but in your situation, I don't see why not. And like I said, at that point, mentally, I was just like,
ain't nothing else that's working.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be there, and I was like, you know what, I need to do something. So why not? It's either I'm gonna have a bad trip or I'm gonna, maybe it'll help. And I went to a comedy show and I took a 0.8, and I had the time of my fucking life.